Greetings, Chummer, and welcome back to another RIT90s recap for Season 2, Episode 31, Opportunity Knocks. After knocking on the door for room number 632, Merlin removes her hand and waits as footsteps move on the opposite side of the door. As the door opens, she's hit with that smoky scent of a mild narcotic wafting out of the room that's bathed in neon light. A man sidles up to the door, and the two of them make eye contact, exchanging equally shocked expressions as Merlin recognizes her college ex-boyfriend, Ben. His hair is longer than it was, and he now wears Shadowrunner gear as he awkwardly shields the interior of the apartment from Merlin's view with his body. After briefly pausing to consider her angle of approach, Merlin pushes her way inside, deciding to continue to veil her investigation as a simple lover's quarrel. She yells at Ben about how he was supposed to be in Tokyo, as a second figure, a gorilla-like metahuman called Betty, stiffens at her presence. The argument continues, but Betty doesn't buy Merlin's ruse. Merlin attempts to stealthily cast a spell to assuage Betty's suspicions. However, Betty sees the spell forming and counters it. This immediately incites conflict as Betty smashes their computer consoles and prompts Ben to destroy the evidence. As he hesitates, Merlin turns to see the wolf's large hexagonal containment unit that contains a mutated human heart which writhes and jerks, exposing the larva-like form of a half-developed bug spirit. She recoils in disgust before whipping out the Pez dispenser and summoning Lance and Percy from the warehouse. Ben backs away towards the back wall and addresses Merlin almost apologetically. "I don't want this to get pinned on you too," before blowing a hole in the apartment. Ben and Betty hop onto a large hoverboard, and he levels a pistol at the encapsulated larva. Lancelot attempts to use his commanding presence to magically order Ben to stay. However, he shakes it off and fires a quick succession of bullets that kills the bug spirit. Enraged, but unwilling to harm Ben, Merlin overpowers Betty's wards to remove Ben's sense of touch. He falls to his knees, grasping desperately onto the board. Percy, hearing Merlin's plea to not injure Ben, decides to try and damage the board instead. Zero, hearing the commotion, sends his drones up to impede the pair's escape. Sensing the tides of the encounter changing, Betty tells Ben to run before leaping off of the hoverboard towards Zero's exosuit in an attempt to incapacitate it. However, Zero repels the attack and shoves Betty down towards the street. She frantically claws at the side of the building, but fails to find any purchase as she plummets 6 stories down onto the asphalt below with a sickening thud. With all of his drones in position, Zero gives Ben a warning. Any wrong moves will earn him a one-way trip to the ground. On the other side of town, Arthur enlists Gawain's help as he reviews a strange message that he received on his comlink. Someone that he knew from his Atlantean Foundation days used Dr. Hyde's device to send Arthur a distress call. Apparently, Ned is very concerned that his counterpart, Ted, is missing. Confused by the message, Arthur attempts to get in contact with Hyde. However, Hyde is not quick to trust and barrages Arthur with a series of identifying questions. Eventually, Arthur is able to wear down Hyde, and he proposes that they meet up to fence some of the chemicals from Egg's lab. He agrees on the condition that Arthur helps Ned. With the bargain struck, Hyde sends Arthur the location of a clue to his hideout, and Gawain quickly flags down a taxi. The two pile in the car and meet Terry, the cab driver. On the journey to the location, Terry laments that he's never actually gotten to drive the car without the AI. Gawain and Arthur exchange mischievous looks before Arthur easily marks and disables the system's autopilot feature. The taxi speeds off into traffic as Gawain messages the group to check on their investigation. Eventually, they find Dr. Hyde's sprite at the last place that Arthur and he were together. It is there that Arthur is able to learn that Hyde's new hideout is literally hanging off of the underside of the Star District. Then, Gawain quickly texts Percy to get a rendezvous point for the party. Back at Ben's apartment, Merlin implores him to stay and explain himself. Ben, seeing Betty's body on the street, looks back at the drones angrily and, fighting against Merlin's magic, manages to punch the gas on the hoverboard. This, however, triggers Zero's drones, and they fire, hitting Ben's ankle. Pain flashes across his face for a moment before, in an instant, the top 2 layers of his skin detonate. The resulting flashbang temporarily blinds and deafens everyone except Percy, who squints at him from behind her flare compensation goggles. With the superheated smoke obscuring the scene, Zero tries to use his drones to sense Ben's location, and succeeds, sending a volley of small drones pelting against his scorching form. The force of this sends Ben plummeting off of his board and towards the ground, but his descent is quickly arrested by Betty's hoverboard that careens around the corner and is able to catch him. Able to see again, Lance channels all of his magical energy into the building to create a cement pillar that blocks Ben's path. Ben tries to skid to a halt, but is unable to stop before crashing into the brittle cement blockade. Hearing that Knight Errant is less than 30 seconds from the scene, Percy grabs Merlin and begins to descend the building using her climbing gear. While doing so, she receives a message from Gawain telling her that they're only a few minutes away from their location. Tune in next episode to find out what happens next. And always remember, the birds work for the bourgeoisie.